I think are pretty exciting about technology, and not have to fill out reports and documentation and How many IT pros in the room? IT admins? A couple of you. How many developers? Cool. You guys will like this. Management. Cool. You'll think this is going to save you some money, but don't go to sleep after lunch. It's a bit of a techie subject, but it's got corporation kind of impact. So we want to make sure we cover both ends of the spectrum for you. You doing a lead-in? All right. Cool. Okay. We might as well get started. I think most people are either playing golf or finishing lunch or, So, we're going to talk a bit about federated identity in the cloud and how you can federate. But, just to be clear, this is not a comprehensive overview of Windows Identity Framework, nor is it a comprehensive overview of Azure or a comprehensive overview. That's kind of oxymoron, isn't it? A comprehensive overview of ADFS v2. But we are going to talk about each of these technologies and how they each play a part in allowing you to federate with partners and customers in about 10 minutes. The session's longer than 10 minutes, but that's how long it'll take. And these technologies, when you combine them in the right way, will save you a lot of development and recoding time. A couple more people coming in. There's lots of seats, plenty down here. I don't spit that far. I was told I got to stay on stage because we're recording this. So. Oh, I know that guy. Chris, sit down. Okay, so agenda. We're going to talk about claims-based identity now. How many of you are familiar with claims-based identity now? A few of you. Anybody using OAuth or OpenID? A couple of you, all right. They're first-class citizens now, right? It's all good. Is anybody using SAML tokens for identity management? Oh, cool. Those are fun to manage, aren't they? They're big tokens. Okay. Has anybody played with the Azure Access Control Service? Nobody. All right, fair enough. Has anybody installed and played with ADFS v2 yet? Okay, one of you. All right. Good. Okay, so let's get into this. We're talking about this idea of business-ready security, and a good part of that revolves around identity management. In fact, a couple people, Chris and Paul, have talked about FIM, and a lot of people have made comments like identity management is the core of a successful cloud, initiative. I believe that. That's probably very true. In fact, when you think about it, just about everything you do has to revolve around identity management. If you can't figure out who these people are and if they're authorized to access your services or vice versa, you have no hope of controlling any of it, right? So identity management is critical. We're going to this model of protect everywhere and access anywhere, right? The idea of direct access. Did any of you see Jeff's direct access talk? The idea that you can access your data from any location across any network and have that data be secure wherever it ends up. Okay. Then we've got integrate and extend security across the enterprise. And often we've done this and it's become sticky, hasn't it? Anybody using smart cards? Yeah, you'll definitely want to talk to Paul and Chris, right? Is it easy to manage your smart cards? Are you using FIM? FIM will save you days of work, right? I think smart card rollouts are initially painful, but once you adopt them, it's your access key to everything, right? And talk about simplifying that experience. A lot of people, it takes them a while to get used to using smart cards, but it's easier to remember a shorter PIN than a passphrase. Fair enough. We've been preaching use good passphrases for a long time, and people have taken forever to try to get to that point. Smart cards are a bit easier, but what happens? People lose them, don't they? Hey, it's easy. Make them worth money to them. If we lose a smart card, it's like $500 out of our paycheck. Right, so, I mean, tie it to something that makes sense to them, to add value to it. Anyway, we want to be able to do all these things on the premises or in the cloud. It doesn't matter. These are going to apply equally well in either situation. So we don't want to get too tied up about this is just a cloud thing or this is just an on-premise thing. It's got to work in both locations. We want to go from being a blocker to an enabler, right down here in the bottom. So we want to go from being a cost center to adding value to the organization. And right, we want to go from being siloed organizations and siloed development teams into a seamless identity and access management solution across the organization. Right? These are similar pillars to this. Now you'll be able to download these slides. Some of the texty slides I'm going to go through fairly quick because I want to show you the demos. I want to show you how this thing works and explain these ideas, okay? We want to provide more secure always-on access and enable it from any device. Claims-based identity can help you do that, okay? If we go to the blue one, right? Simplify security, manage compliance. That's going to be critical, especially if you're thinking about moving anything to the cloud or you're interacting with cloud services like BPOS, okay? I think most people have straggled in now. So we have these challenges with federated identity, don't we? Has anybody done federation? Done federation IDs? One? Anybody else? A couple of you? Have any of you tried to federate with us? No? We have a few partner organizations and a few customers that do. So they can use their corporate credentials to access some of our services and online services. It's tricky, right? It's not simple. Did you guys have an easy time of it when you did it? No? It sucked, didn't it? I'm actually using a real Azure instance in this. The Azure ACS has now currently not been configured to understand anybody. So we have a service that understands incoming tokens, but we haven't configured our federation. I'm just showing you in this one that it's not working. I'm going to do the federation portion right now. So since this mom and pop cookie shop is a very simple organization, they're okay with a couple users and having a password. What we're going to do is I'm going to add an issuer, a scope with a rule in it, and a token policy. The issuer itself is just the mom and pop cookie shop. They're the ones issuing a request to my service. I'm telling Azure, how do I authenticate the issuer? In this case, it's this key. They're going to be signing their requests with that key. It's a symmetric key, so I can decrypt their signature and be able to understand it. I create a rule for them. In the scope of the getting started issuer, I wanted to have this output claim. When they come in and they're authorized, I want an action output and the type of value of reverse. Okay? It's a simple token. Not much going on here. And then we have a token policy. For this person or anybody being any token that the ACS issues to my service, it's going to sign it with this key. So I know what key to use to validate that token. Okay? I'm going to save this to ACS. Internet speed should be pretty good, I think. Hopefully it says everything's good. Completed successfully. And now we're going to try the same operation. So now this thing is making a request, signing it with that key. It sent it off to Azure. We got the token back. We then made the call to the service with the valid token, and it reversed our string for us, which is here. Okay. So it took me a little less than 15 seconds to onboard that client, just by telling the ACS what to expect. Now that in itself is kind of cool. My service doesn't know about anybody. I am not keeping a list of users. I'm not keeping a list of passwords. I'm not keeping an AD domain. All it knows is I have to validate a token that comes into me from this service. If the token is valid, I base my decisions on the claims. This up here is the raw token that you'll get, and this is what it looks like when it's been decoded. The action is reversed. The issuer is the ACS tester, which is my ACS namespace. And the audience is important, HTTP localhost SAML test. That is the service on my local machine that accepts these. That is how you know which service the token is valid for, is its audience. And the last part's the signature on the token that I decoded with the key I expect from Azure, from the ACS. So now what if BigCorp comes along? Okay? BigCorp doesn't want to use passwords. Like that's crap. We want to use our own identities for this. We want people to sign in with their smart cards to our Active Directory system, and we want them to have access to your service. So if I try to do this right now, oops, I better put my smart card in, not just hold it. I'll just restart it. I rebuilt this demo last night, and I didn't put the error handling in for the smart card. So it's going to say, okay, I'm going to create this request. I'm going to sign it, and it's going to ask me for my smart card credentials. It'll then use what's in a smart card to authenticate itself to my little ADFS server here. Once it does that, ADFS is going to create this SAML token. And these SAML tokens are in this top window, and they're massive. Right? They're huge. In fact, they can get so big that they won't fit in the authentication header of a request. So they're pretty hard to deal with. This one also returned unauthorized. Right? So now I'm going to onboard a great big company. I'll go back over here. Now the first thing I need to do is actually clear that space. And this is going to be fixed in version 2 of the ACS. You won't have to clear it first when you do the updates. But I'll clear that. So I'm wiping out what was already there. And I'm going to add a couple rules. So in this case, we still have our initial rule set in here from the first one. But now we have another issuer. This issuer is basically the local ADFS server I have running here. And it's using a digital certificate to sign the requests. So I tell the ACS, from this group, expect a digital certificate. Expect these all to be signed with that certificate. And then in that scope, which is the scope of my local running service, I set up a different rule. For the test issuer, if they have the type action and value reverse in their SAML token, then I want you to create an SWT and sign it for me with the action reverse as one of the claims in it. Okay? Now I might have different services that do different things for different people in the same organization. If their tokens are signed differently, I can have it change the type of output token it sends me to allow them authenticate, or to allow them to get to different services in my organization, or to give it a different audience. But in this case, it's going to just do this simple service I've got. I already did that, didn't I? We'll find out in a second. So I'm going to try to save this new configuration to the cloud with my new test issuer and my new rule. The token policy is still the same because it's still outcoming and signing tokens the same way. Okay, it thinks that completed successfully. Smart cards there. So we'll do this. Now, we're going to take this from Big Corp. We're going to have our ADFS server create a SAML token for me. And that one worked. So the SAML token was sent to the ACS. ACS presented me a simple web token that I handed to the service, and now I just onboarded Big Corp with all their thousands of users that they're going to authorize to use this service. I know it's been a long way down Punchline Road here, but that's frickin' cool. Think about all the trouble you would have had to have gone to in the past to make this happen. Think about all the different coding you would have had to do. Think about the SAML stuff you would have had to do, taking apart tokens, doing authentication, building user stores, building domain controllers in your DMZ. It's actually pretty powerful. Okay? And it's comparatively simple to do. So here's what we did. We added the ACS into the picture. And with the ACS, we want to onboard mom and pop, so we got rid of our user store database. That whole database went away. We got rid of our Active Directory database. We don't need it anymore. We created some rules, and we put those in the access control service. So when mom and pop sign in with their secret key, since they don't have ADFS, they don't have anything fancy, they're issued an SWT, which we use to authenticate them, and they can get into our service. We issued a couple more rules about Big Corp, so when they present their SAML token, they get an SWT that we understand, and now they can access our service just as easily. What about this? OpenID. They're already based on simple web tokens through the OAuth standard. We can take one of those simple web tokens, convert it to a simple web token we understand, and onboard anybody with an OAuth-based ID. How much code did we have to change in the service? None. We haven't had to change anything on our end. If we want to move our service to the cloud, it all just works. It all still works. Okay? That's a very powerful system we have at our disposal now. And I think that in the future, we're going to look at more and more of this. It's going to be the way things are done across the web. These simple web tokens, OAuth and OpenID. Right? So in summary, here we go. Federated identity in the org or across the internet is here, and it's all possible with claims. It's very simplified with claims. Right? We get out of the quagmire of managing identities. The ACS can act as your cloud-based STS. It's already set up just through rules for accepting a whole swath of different types of identities and converting it to your choice of simple web token. Okay? And ADFS v2 can be your front end for your version of this. You can issue your SAML tokens, you can run through the ACS, or just accept your SAML tokens, whichever one you want. All right? Congratulations. Most of you are still awake and you made it. Thanks. I left 10 minutes. If you do want to ask questions, I'll be here. If you want to ask them now, that's fine. We have 10 minutes if you want. Yep. Where can we find more information about this with the code examples? The Azure ACS has a software development kit, an SDK that you can download that has a bunch of samples in it, working samples. It is available now. The Azure ACS SDK is available now. Get the App Fabric SDK, and it's got like half a dozen different examples of doing this in it, which is what some of these demos are based on. Come up and talk to me in a minute, and I'll give you my name. I can mail them to you as well. Okay. The ACS service. The ACS service is live. I was actually using a live Azure-based service to do this demo. Right? And the version 2 of the ACS is in lab environment, so you can get all the WS star, all the WS stuff, WS Trust stuff working as well. Yep. How do I handle disputes with? So if Joe authenticates to Windows Live and orders some stuff and non-repudiation. So if Joe says he didn't order it, all those tokens are digitally signed. So if he shows up at your service with a token, either he gave his Windows Live ID password to somebody else or something like that. In that case, it's not really your problem. You have to say your Windows Live ID account must have been compromised. Somebody must have guessed your password, or you gave him your password, and he'll have to take that up with them to correct that. Because you can't control if he uses a crappy password like dog and somebody guesses it. Right? How would he do that? I would have him contact the Windows Live, and if it's a Windows Live ID, have him contact the Windows Live ID team, say, I think my account's been compromised, tell him to change his password right away, and then the dispute bit, that's up to you to handle if you want to, be a buddy and refund his money or whatever. But Thanks. I'll send it to you. Thanks. Yeah, so that would be, tell him to go to Windows Live ID to get his password reset, tell him it might be compromised, have him change his password. But then the rest of it's kind of between you and your customer at that point. Yep. So if you don't have the Kerberos one-hop, how do you prevent relay and man-in-the-middle attacks? Well, first of all these tokens are digitally signed, so they can't be tampered with. If someone intercepts a token in transit and then tries to change one of the claims, the digital signature is no longer valid, right? That takes care of that. You can do all this transmission over HTTPS, over SSL, to prevent it from being sniffed, and by default it wants to turn SSL on. And you can determine how long the tokens live. So in the token policy that I had up here, there's a timeout on it. So if we look at the get and start token policy, that's the life in seconds. I can change that to 300 if you want to. If it's a critical banking operation or something, you want a very short-lived token. So the bad guy would have to be very crafty, very quick, and very studious to be able to pull anything off, especially over SSL. Oh, you can, but remember, the token is digitally signed. Yeah, you should. Remember, the tokens are also issued for only one service. So if that token is issued for http://www.myservice.com/printing service, that URL pretty much belongs to you, right? If the bad guy can spoof the URL, DNS poisoning or whatever it might be, then he could probably pull off a man in the middle. If you use it over SSL, it pretty much takes care of that problem right out of the box, right? Yep. Yeah, so the question is, so let me see if I got the question right. The question is essentially, if you hand it off to Facebook and Yahoo and all these other people, aren't you essentially pushing off the responsibility for properly authenticating someone to these people who may not have a strong password or blah, 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 right? Not necessarily, because you choose who you trust. If you don't think Facebook, for example, has a strong enough password policy, then you can choose not to accept Facebook IDs, right? Say, okay, well, in this case, I'm only going to accept a Windows Live ID, because with Windows Live ID in your account, you can say people using Windows Live ID must have a strong password. And you can enforce that on Windows Live ID users who are going to use that to access your service. Alternatively, you can give these people a different form of OpenID or your own STS. No, you'd set that up beforehand with with Facebook or Windows Live ID. You say Windows Live ID tokens that are issued for me, they must have a strong password on the account. And then so you know if it came from Windows Live ID that's meeting your password restriction policies. Yep. Maybe you wouldn't want to. I mean, if you don't think that Facebook, Google, Live ID is secure, if you don't think that they can actually authenticate someone, don't trust them. Don't use them. Use a different provider, right? And that's up to your risk level. If your risk appetite is like, okay, I know Windows Live ID can use strong passwords and they'll do email authentication and all that, you might decide to trust them, and that's okay, right? You'll let them perform the authentication and be all right with it, right? If you want it to, yes. It'll include people's ages and address, whatever you decide you want it. There is, but that would be up to them depending on the service they're signing into. For example, Windows Live ID, it won't send that information to you if you don't need it, right? Because you don't need to know exactly where they live unless they're going to ship something to them. Usually it's in the case of the user. Now, different countries have different rules about this, but in almost, I'd say a vast majority of them, it's up to the user on what you have, what's sent. Okay. Yep. One more time. SAML HTTP post pattern. Yep. Not if you've got it working. If you're using ADF SV1 or you're using a custom thing that will create your SAML tokens to do the post, yeah, go for it. It gives you a plug-in, turnkey solution to make all that happen, is what it is. You drop it in front of your AD, you point it at a claims store, so there you go. Now I get the tokens, they're signed by a trusted certificate, I'm pretty much done. There is. If you download the Windows Identity Foundation kit, it'll have an SDK where you can open it up in Visual Studio, and there's a template for creating an STS on your own if you want to. Yep. Is there somewhere to store uniquely? Yeah, it's one of the claims. So you can say this is the person's name, or this is the person's OU, common name, blah, blah, blah. You can have that as one of the claims to uniquely identify individual users within an organization. Yep. All right, I am out of time now. I'll continue to answer questions either down in front or in the recharge bar if you have more, but I need to clear my stuff off the stage. So thanks for coming, guys. I'll be down there in a second.